Never did I imagine that fate could play so mercilessly with my feelings. It all began on an ordinary autumn evening when I, Jake, happened to meet her. Emily. I vividly recall the way the streetlights reflected in her deep, warm eyes and how her gentle smile lit up her face, as if it were promising incredible adventures. Back then, I was working at a small advertising agency, dreaming of a bright future, yet my heart was ready to surrender to something genuine and sincere. That evening, as I first saw Emily in a cozy corner cafe on the street, time seemed to slow down, and I felt an undeniable shift inside me. She approached me as I stood by the counter and asked for directions to the nearest bus stop. Her voice was soft, almost like a whisper of the wind, imbued with a kindness that immediately touched the depths of my soul. We began talking, and it felt as though with every look and every movement she unveiled an entire world, brimming with hope and dreams. The city suddenly transformed from a cold, soulless place into a symphony of serendipitous meetings and fateful encounters. Emily spoke about her life, her work at a local art center, her love for painting, and her insatiable desire to learn new things. Every word, filled with genuine emotion, made me believe that she was the one with whom I could build a true future. We laughed together, shared our dreams, and in every one of her words, I found confirmation that fate had given me a chance at real happiness. I remember our walks in the park, discussing books, movies, and even the little details of everyday life, which somehow turned magical in her presence. I could hardly believe that such an ideal could exist in reality. It seemed to me that I had found my soulmate, a person who understood me without words, who could bring warmth even on the coldest days. Everything felt so simple and clear, as if the universe had conspired to bring us together so that we could discover a world full of light and joy. Every meeting, every glance, every smile became the building blocks of a shared future I so longed for. We spent hours together in that quaint cafe, where local artists' paintings adorned the walls, and where time itself seemed to lose its grip. I began to jot down moments in my notebook that felt infinitely precious, knowing that such moments would forever remain etched in my memory. There were mornings when I woke up with the belief that each day would bring something new and beautiful for us, and nights filled with dreams of a future built together. I never doubted for a moment that the love I felt for Emily was the purest and most sincere love possible. Even the simplest moments, a shared breakfast, strolling through city streets, or an evening by the fireplace, were imbued with meaning and warmth. Yet, as it often happens, life has a way of introducing its own twists into even the most perfect plans, and the first hints of change came slowly, like a subtle chill creeping under the skin at the onset of winter. I cannot recall the exact moment when the first seed of doubt was planted within me, but gradually I began to notice changes in Emily. From seemingly insignificant details at first, to more obvious signals as time went on. At first, I tried to dismiss these premonitions as nothing more than the distractions of her busy life, attributing her distance to fatigue or work pressures. I clung to the hope that it was all temporary, that the routine of her daily obligations would soon give way to the old warmth between us. I continued to listen to her stories, admire her talent, and see in her eyes that sincere love I once believed was unbreakable. However, with each passing day, our conversations grew shorter and her responses more detached. I could not understand what was happening, for our dialogues used to be filled with passion and trust. Perhaps I was changing too, becoming less attentive. I wondered, searching for a reason for these subtle shifts. Deep down, I knew that something was not as it should be. Yet, I could not abandon this love. Each morning began with the thought that, despite everything, there was still something beautiful and unbreakable between us, a silent force as strong as steel. On those evenings, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I often sat on my apartment balcony, gazing at the sky and dreaming of a day when, despite all the hardships, we could return to the moment when our hearts beat as one. Little did I know that beneath the calm of our meetings lay a dark omen, a prelude to the pain and loss that was to come. I tried not to pay attention to the slightest details, dismissing them as mere signs of fatigue or the reticence that followed a long day's work. At times, I felt as though I was exaggerating, that my thoughts were merely the shadows of paranoia creeping in during the quiet hours of the night, when you are alone with your fears. Yet, in those silent nights when the stillness enveloped the house, I began to hear the echo of her footsteps in the hallway, and my heart would start pounding, as if trying to warn me of something important, though I could not quite decipher the signs. I started to wonder if I was missing crucial signals, those small clues that once seemed insignificant. There was a new, unrecognizable shadow in her eyes, and a note of detachment in her voice, as though she no longer belonged to this home or shared in the dreams we once had. These thoughts tormented me, yet I continued to cling to the belief that our love could prevail, that faith alone could save us from the creeping doubts. I searched for comfort in our past conversations, rereading messages and recalling the days when we planned our future together with endless promises of eternal loyalty. I even attempted to speak with her about my feelings, but my words would tangle in the bitterness of my despair, and her answers became increasingly cold and distant. Weeks turned into months filled with quiet apprehension, where every day felt like a test of our relationship's strength. I watched her every gesture, trying to decode the secret language of her eyes and expressions, hoping that somewhere deep inside she still loved me. But the more I tried, the more I sensed a widening gap between us, an invisible chasm that no amount of love or future promises could bridge. Our meetings grew less frequent and the moments of intimacy colder and more superficial. I could feel the invisible threads that once bound our souls beginning to fray, leaving behind only fragments of memories of what once seemed eternal. Even as I clung to the hope that things would eventually return to the way they were, I was painfully aware that something was irrevocably wrong. Over time, the signs became unmistakable. I started noticing more frequent moments when Emily would disappear for long stretches without explanation. She would claim that she was tied up at work, but there was something in her tone, a quiet secret that she was desperately trying to hide from me. I tried to reassure myself that these were just minor misunderstandings, that everyone goes through periods of doubt. Yet with each passing day, it became increasingly clear that something was happening behind my back, something I wasn't meant to know. Often, when we met after work, her eyes carried a mysterious glimmer, and I saw in them reflections of emotions not meant for me, echoes of memories that suggested she had been in the arms of someone else. My imagination painted pictures of Emily laughing in another man's embrace, of him whispering words of tenderness and care that I had never heard before. These thoughts tormented me, tearing at me from within, making my heart ache with a betrayal I was not yet ready to fully acknowledge. I remember one evening, an evening when I arrived home earlier than usual, when I heard hushed whispers coming from behind the bedroom door. I couldn't catch every word, but the tone was so foreign and detached that I immediately realized something was terribly wrong. A whirlwind of thoughts overtook me as I tried to piece together every little clue, questioning where I had gone wrong. Every minor detail, a lingering glance, a phone call at odd hours, a late return home combined to form a dreadful picture. I began scrutinizing her phone, checking the timing of calls and messages, desperate to find even the faintest trace of what she might be hiding. In the quiet of the night, when the house seemed to be enveloped in deep slumber, I sat at my desk with my laptop, scrolling through our conversations and looking at photos where Emily was alone, always smiling, yet with a hint of something unspoken, as if she were trying to conceal her true self. I could not believe that the person I loved with all my heart could betray me in such a way. Every seemingly insignificant detail that once appeared trivial now took on a sinister hue, drawing me ever deeper into despair and doubt. With each day, I became more withdrawn, isolating myself from friends and family so as not to reveal the torment hidden within, while countless nights were spent lost in endless contemplation over what had happened to the love that had once meant everything to me. I felt as though I was losing myself, and every new morning brought only more pain and disillusionment, intensifying the feeling that I could never restore what had once been so sacred. Every sound, every rustle, was a painful reminder that my life had spiraled out of control, that the unseen hand of betrayal had already touched my heart, I could no longer look her in the eyes, for in them I saw the reflection of someone else's feelings, emotions that were not mine. Then, one day, everything took on its final, terrible shape. I accidentally uncovered undeniable proof that all my suspicions were true. The screen of my computer flashed messages that left no room for doubt. My Emily had been living a double life. In those long hours when the city was already submerged in the silence of night, I sat before my computer, sifting through photos and messages, desperate to find a clue that might explain her changed behavior. And then, amidst thousands of exchanges, I discovered a series of messages from an unknown number bearing a familiar name, Tyler. Every word, every phrase seemed torn from someone's intimate life, filled with the tenderness and passion that I once believed belonged solely to our love. A chill spread through my body as my mind tried to comprehend how it was possible that the person I trusted could commit such a cruel betrayal. The conversation was long, imbued with emotions that contradicted everything I had known about our life together. Tyler, it seemed, did not hesitate to express his feelings, and every message dripped with affection and passion that made me feel utterly insignificant and betrayed. I remembered how Emily once spoke of her dreams, how she described what she yearned to experience in love, and how she assured me that our bond was unique, that we were two hearts in perfect harmony. But now all those words seemed like lies, a mere mask to cover up the bitter reality of her infidelity. My hands trembled as I reread those lines filled with promises and confessions not meant for me. My heart pounded as if trying to regain its balance, but only sank further into the depths of despair. My thoughts raced. How long had she been living this double life? How many times had I been nothing more than a pawn in her cruel game? I felt shattered, betrayed to the core, unable to reconcile the fact that the love I once held sacred had turned into a living nightmare. Every word of that conversation, every promise she had once made, now mocked my once unwavering belief that relationships could endure forever. I searched within myself for answers, trying to decode every minute detail, every unspoken word, but the bitter truth remained elusive, too painful, too raw to swallow without agony. The realization hit me hard. Everything I had thought eternal was merely an illusion, a trick designed to give temporary happiness before the inevitable collapse. In that moment, I could no longer see Emily the same way. I could not trust her soft promises or pretend that everything was all right while my insides crumbled. The deep wound inflicted by betrayal became a burden I could no longer bear, and the world around me faded into a never-ending series of dark days where joy was nothing but a distant memory. Finally, when I had gathered enough courage to confront reality, all my fears and doubts coalesced into a burning need to know the truth, no matter how bitter it might be. I approached Emily on one of those seemingly ordinary days when nothing hinted at impending doom. Our conversation began innocently enough, with greetings and the usual small talk about daily life. Yet in my voice there was an unmistakable heaviness, a trace of the sleepless nights filled with painful thoughts I had tried so hard to hide behind a facade of calm. I began to ask questions, first tentatively, as if afraid to shatter the remaining illusion of our love. At first, she answered evasively, her eyes darting away, and I saw fear reflected in them, a fear of having her secrets exposed. My questions grew more insistent, and her answers became colder and more distant. At one point, when her voice began to tremble, she tried to justify herself by citing work stress and exhaustion. But at that very moment, my eyes realized the truth. Those explanations were nothing more than a desperate attempt to hide what I had already seen in every gesture and every glance. I recalled every instance when she had suddenly withdrawn, every time her phone had quietly rung, and every moment she had disappeared into another room, leaving me alone with a growing sense of despair. In that moment, my emotions broke free, and I could no longer contain the pain that had accumulated over months of deceit. My voice, heavy with anguish, carried an unquenchable thirst for the truth. I asked her directly, "Who is Tyler? Why can't you look me in the eye like you used to?" Her face went pale, and in her eyes I saw a blend of fear, regret, and determination, as if she knew that there was no more time for lies. Her words, filled with contradictions, apologies mingled with accusations and feeble explanations, failed to conceal the depth of her betrayal. She admitted that there had always been something between us she was too afraid to acknowledge, that she felt suffocated by the weight of our commitments, and that Tyler had become her lifeline in a sea of uncertainty. In that moment, I realized that everything I had believed in was nothing more than an illusion, a comforting lie crafted to soothe her own fears and weaknesses. Every sound of her voice, every gesture of her hand, every sorrowful look left me powerless, as if I were witnessing the collapse of the world we had once so carefully built together. My thoughts oscillated between memories of happier times and the crushing reality of the present, and my shattered heart could barely withstand another blow of fate. I wondered how such a betrayal could have happened, and why I, who had believed so wholeheartedly in the purity of our feelings, had become a victim of deception. Her confession resonated in my mind like a death sentence, leaving me with no strength to forgive the destruction of everything we had so lovingly nurtured. Tears streamed down my face, unstoppable, each drop a testament to the pain of betrayal, a proof that love can sometimes turn into the most terrifying nightmare when given a chance. We stood there like two lost souls on the edge of a precipice, where every word, every look, heralded an unavoidable end. Left alone with my thoughts, I tried to gather myself, to make sense of what had happened, and to find the strength to move on. The sting of betrayal permeated every fiber of my being, leaving behind a scar that I feared would never heal. I understood that I could never return to the way things were. The days when everything seemed so simple, when my only dream was to be happy with the one I loved. But now, before me lay a path filled with uncertainty and loneliness, where every minute felt eternal, and every glance in the mirror was a painful reminder of my broken heart. I remembered the days when Emily and I had built plans together, dreaming of a future where no storm could ever shatter our love. All of that now seemed like a distant dream, blurred by the shadows of a reality tainted by deceit. Every little detail that once seemed insignificant now stood as a painful symbol of betrayal, forcing me to relive the agony over and over again. I realized that my life would never return to its former state, that a part of my soul would forever remain in that moment when I finally saw the truth I had desperately tried to ignore. Bidding farewell to Emily became as inevitable as saying goodbye to the dreams I had once cherished. Time seemed to stand still in that moment, and there I was, alone among the ruins of my shattered heart, trying to muster the strength to take that first step toward an uncertain future. Step by step, day by day, I began to understand that betrayal was not only a source of pain, but also an opportunity to grow, to recognize my own vulnerabilities, and to eventually forgive. Not just her, but myself, for letting that illusion cloud my judgment. Although a long road of loneliness and reflection lay ahead, I knew that this agony, like every trial, had to be overcome to make room for something new, something sincere. Now, months after that fateful conversation, I struggle to find the strength to look back and remember the love that once defined my life. I am learning to live with this bitter truth, understanding that infidelity is not only a violation of trust, but also a lesson life offers so that we may emerge stronger. Every new dawn gives me a chance to start over, even though the wounds remain like scars, reminders that being betrayed is a trial that transforms you deep within. Meetings with friends and attempts to find solace in new pursuits offer slight distractions, yet the pain of loss and deception lingers as a silent witness to those moments when my heart once beat in unison with another. Sometimes, in the stillness of the night, I wonder if I could have done something differently, if I could have noticed the signs that warned me of the coming storm. But the answers remain out of reach, leaving behind an emptiness that no words can ever fill. I recall the day I sat on a deserted park bench, gazing at the stars in the hope of finding even a glimmer of hope, an ember that could light the way forward. That was when I realized that saying goodbye to the past was not a sign of weakness, but a necessary step to free oneself from the shackles of pain and to gather the strength for a new beginning. Though my story is one of betrayal and infidelity, it also stands as a testament to the complexity of love, a love that is multifaceted and often unpredictable. I have come to cherish even the fleeting moments of honesty however brief they may have been, for they gave me the strength to overcome the pain and taught me that even after the harshest betrayal, one can learn to forgive and move on. Perhaps I will never fully forget Emily or erase from my memory the sweet words that once became weapons in the hands of fate. But I am learning to accept the past as it is and to hold dear the lessons it has taught me. Now, I look toward the future with cautious optimism, knowing that every loss is a step toward something new, a future in which the flame of true love may one day be rekindled. Even though the path ahead may be strewn with the thorns of memories and shattered dreams, I still believe that time will heal even the deepest wounds, and that at the end of this long, arduous journey, a morning full of light and hope awaits, where I will finally rediscover myself. Today, I live with the awareness that my story is not only a tale of pain and betrayal, but also a testament to the fact that love can be complicated and multifaceted. I have learned to cherish moments of sincerity, even if they passed as swiftly as a fleeting spark. Every morning I wake up with the understanding that the past does not define me, and that despite all the trials, there remain countless opportunities for happiness and new beginnings. My journey may be long and challenging, but I no longer fear solitude, for I've come to realize that it is in solitude that true inner strength is forged, and the desire to become the best version of oneself is born. This story, filled with infidelity and betrayal, will remain a part of my past, but it does not dictate my future. A future in which I will learn to trust again, to love again, and ultimately to rediscover the purity I once saw in every glance and every touch.